Ahoy there, fellow travelers. Welcome to E-Travels with E-Trules, a personal and literary podcast of travel adventures and misadventures from around the world. This is Eric Trules, and thanks for listening. I've lived in Los Angeles for almost 30 years. 10 years in white bread Santa Monica, and 23 years in multicultural Echo Park. I love Echo Park. It's mi barrio. When I first moved here in 1993, it was full of musicians, socialists, Latinos, and artists like myself. There were gunshots and roosters crowing many nights of the week. My friends and even the LA Times asked me why the hell I wanted to move to the East Side. I said things like diversity, neighborhood, community, food, and history. But then, about 5-6 years ago, the hipsters and professionals started invading Echo Park with their well-known urban phenomenon called gentrification. I wrote about it on the Huffington Post, and this controversial story is an adaptation of the blog post for this podcast. E-Travels with E-Trules. The gentrification of mi barrio, Echo Park. Summer 2014. Sometimes you don't have to go anywhere to see the world. Like just yesterday, I went to La Presencia Cubano Festival, the longtime arts festival right in my neighborhood, which celebrates the music and culture of the Cuban people here in LA. The north side of Echo Park Lake, just south of Aimee Semple McPherson's famous Four-Square Temple, was mobbed with thousands of people, hordes of them draped in flags and T-shirts of Cuban red, white, and blue. I felt right at home. You see, I first moved here to the hills of Echo Park 21 years ago. Actually, that's not a long time ago compared to the likes of the Gasporas, who lived next door uphill for over 40 years, or the Chins on the other side, downhill, who've been here almost as long, or Marion, just across the street, who died just last past spring at the age of 91. A left-wing politico who'd been living here on Red Hill for over 50 years. My problem at the festival was that I couldn't find a place to park. I drove around and around for maybe 20 minutes, but I came up blank. I'd been to lots of festivals in Echo Park, but this never happened before. I knew all the little nooks and parking crannies, all the secret parking spots down the alleys, in the grocery store parking lots, behind the liquor stores. Still, nada. I drove back home annoyed, but not defeated. I got on my old-school blue 3-speed bicycle, and I pedaled back down the steep, almost unbikeable hill. I told myself, no problema. Because once I got to the park, like I said, I felt right at home. I roamed around amongst the crowds of every skin color. I ate fried plantains with creme fraiche. And then I laid on my back in the newly planted grass, and I stared up at the blue sky through one of the 100-year-old giant eucalyptus trees. I relaxed in the middle of the crowd. I soaked up the piano brass Cubano dance music, the throbbing bass, and the entire hubbub exploding and pulsating all around me. I felt like I was back in Havana, like in the summer of 2010. But today was even more Cuban, if that was possible, right here in mi own barrio, Echo Parque. But no parking. It was still sticking in my craw. I just couldn't get over how much the neighborhood had changed over the last 21 years. I remember when I first moved here in '93, after living 10 years in white bread Santa Monica. "Why are you moving, Trules? Nobody leaves Santa Monica. I mean, what are you doing? You're rent controlled." "Oh, come on, man. It's boring. I'm tired of my little one-bedroom with the same neighbors in a cookie-cutter apartment building. Yeah, it's $459 a month. Great. But it's not big enough or private enough for parties. I'm moving to the old Hollywood hills of Echo Park. 3 bedrooms, terraced garden, view of the Hollywood sign from the back deck. Bye-bye, Santa Monica." "Okay, Trules. Good luck." You see, back in those days, 1993, Echo Park still had the reputation of being a dangerous, gun-toting Latino barrio. La M, the adult Latino gang of the hood, supposedly still hung out after dark in Elysian Park, just a 2-minute walk up the hill. In fact, back in the day, it was hard to tell the difference between the fireworks in nearby Dodger Stadium and the random gunshots that always kept the neighborhood popping. Of course, when the pops came at 2 or 3 in the morning, you were pretty sure it wasn't from Dodger Stadium and Chavez Ravine. It was from just down the hill, from the lowlands of the still rough and tumble Echo Park Avenue and the iconic drug-dealing Magic gas station at the fork of Echo Park and Morton, where Allison Anders shot her film La Vida Loca. Right across from Chicken Corner, where Latino immigrants raised their hens, and where the crowing roosters woke us up every morning, any time between 3 and 6 a.m. I guess their rooster clocks were always a little haywire, maybe because of the gunshots. My spot in Echo Park, at the top of Lucretia Avenue, used to be called Red Hill, for all the socialist and commie sympathizers that moved to the left-leaning hills of Los Angeles. That's right. Long before the hood became the trendy magnet for wannabe hipsters and musicians deifying the suicidal death of Elliott Smith, it was the home of social activists like Carrie McWilliams and Grace Simons and Leo Politi, not to mention Hollywood mavericks like John Huston and Steve McQueen, jazzman Art Pepper, and oddball artists like Jackson Pollock and Frank Zappa. These days, the hipsters are named Leonardo DiCaprio and Shia LaBeouf. But here's one radical not listed in Wikipedia. Marion's son. You know, right across the street, Marion? Her son was the lawyer for Sirhan Sirhan, the convicted murderer of Bobby Kennedy, right here in downtown L.A. in the Ambassador Hotel in 1968. In fact, for the many months before Marion had to be moved to a nursing home, she would sit home all day long, blaring the tapes of the Sirhan Sirhan Kennedy trial. Loud, round the clock. It would drive you crazy, which Marion clearly was herself. But I guess she hoped, by blaring the tapes, she was immortalizing her beloved, labor-lawyering son, letting all the fashionable newbies anywhere within hearing range know of her son's and the neighborhood's liberal bona fides. Now, ironically, right down the street from Lucretia on Echo Park Avenue near Sunset, there's a new Top Chef eatery called Don't You Know? Red Hill. But back in the day, Echo Park was one of LA's first suburbs. It was called Edendale in the early 20th century, and it was the home of Hollywood's early silent movies. Cowboy star Tom Mix, Mack Sennett's Keystone Cops, Fatty Arbuckle and Mabel Normand, and even the young, scuffling little tramp himself, Charlie Chaplin, who appeared in his first film on today's Glendale Boulevard. Long before Hollywood moved to Paramount, MGM, and Universal, Warner Brothers and Fox and its movie stars moved to Mulholland Drive. They were all right here in Echo Park, waiting for their close-ups, having their affairs, and creating their not-so-silent headlines. So, how did it happen? The gentrification of Echo Park. Well, at least from one longtime resident's point of view, that is yours truly, it started right here, up the street, at the top of Lucretia Avenue. You see, there used to be a big empty lot. Just 3 houses uphill from our house, same side of the street, looking gloriously out at the Hollywood sign and the Griffith Park Observatory just a couple of hillsides over. This lot was completely undeveloped, stark naked, for the first 13 years I lived there. Every time I walked Clay the dog uphill towards Elysian Park, he used the empty lot and the arid dirt just as he liked. Nobody cared. It was Echo Park, man. There were old abandoned cars and tricked-out El Caminos out at the curb. You could walk down the wooden stairway from Lucretia to Echo Park Avenue to take the red car trolley to clang your way to work in downtown L.A. just 50 years ago. But then, one sad and unremarkable day in the year 2003, some forward-thinking and entrepreneurial investors, started clearing out and leveling the empty lot, bulldozing and jackhammering and building, until about a year later, the lot was no longer empty. Instead, it was the commercial site of 3 modern single-family residences, all looking arrogantly down over Echo Park Avenue, out over legendary Tom Mix Hill, over to the sexy and almost touchable hills of Hollywood and Mulholland Drive. But these 3 new modern houses were all seen by us local longtime residents as monstrosities. Huge 3-floor, 4-bedroom, concrete and stucco boxes sticking out like sore thumbs in the historic neighborhood of 1920s wooden bungalows and 1950s one-story stucco houses like mine, built right into the hillside on long wooden stilts like beautiful architectural flamingos. Instead, these new concrete intruders hovering proudly atop the hillside now snidely announce the formal and official gentrification of Echo Park. The old wooden adjacent stairway was renovated into more durable and permanent concrete, and these new houses were put on the marketplace for $750,000 each. Maybe not much in terms of 2016 Echo Park real estate currency, but back then, more than a decade ago, a veritable fortune. And so, what happened was, in one upwardly mobile, fell swoop, these 3 new houses collectively changed the very fabric of Echo Park. They were quickly followed by Silverwood Properties down on Echo Park Avenue, and Phototeca Gallery, and then eventually by the pricey vegan grocery store that sells celery root and hijiki to our wannabe hipster neighbors, who naturally wear their prescribed, short-brimmed hipster hats and walk their young hipster babies and their well-groomed hipster dogs on tightly held hipster leashes past my old school house near the top of one-time Red Hill. And next, guess what? There was another empty lot on Lucretia. This one exactly across the street from us. The house that used to be They're burned down 3 decades ago, and the Japanese family who owned it could never agree between themselves what to do with it. So the lot stayed empty, and Clay the dog fought coyotes there, and we could see the glow from Dodger Stadium when the Stones came to town. We can even hear Mick sing and the fireworks over the tree line. But eventually, the property was also sold about 6 years ago. And soon enough, bulldozers came in to pull down the fruit trees and to level the land for the development of 4 new modern townhouses. The neighbors protested, and we lost. So now, every day, we have banging and clanging and earth-shaking as they build the 4 new townhouses directly across the street in the new Echo Park. They have all the permits, they follow all the rules, and all we neighbors will just have to suck it up and jockey our cars and somehow fit in 20 more new neighbors. In fact, just the other day, one of my new neighbors from quickly gentrifying Echo Park, let's call him John, who recently moved into the hood less than a year ago, had the nerve to come over and knock on my door to demand that I turn down my music. I was confused, having just come to the door expecting just another Jehovah's Witness or perhaps another magazine-slinging teenager, when John, without even introducing himself, bluntly asked me to turn down my music. I took a moment, and then I just sort of laughed out loud. Do you know what neighborhood you just moved into, my friend? It's called Echo Park. We have dogs here who bark 24/7. Which, by the way, is much better than the roosters who used to crow here every friggin' morning whenever they liked it. We have bands full of musicians like Jackson Browne and Glenn Frey, who used to live right here when they were young and hungry. Bands that practice whenever they want to, day or night. Why do you think it's called Echo Park, man? Because the hills are alive. They resound. Not only with music, but sometimes with gunshots and jazz, and left-wing socialists playing endless tapes, and the cacophony of illegal immigrants and yuppies and bobos, bourgeois bohemians, of which I may be one. So chill, dude. We play music here, loud music. We have to put up with our neighbors and their eccentricities. Just imagine if you had to listen to suicidal Elliott Smith or weird Frank Zappa practicing live music in the neighborhood 24/7. Just imagine that one of your neighbors was a heroin-addicted anti-Semitic junkie who hurled insults at you from her doorstep 20 feet from your bedroom window whenever the hell she had the drug-addicted urge. Just imagine, pal, that maybe you've moved to the wrong neighborhood, or maybe moved too soon before the gentrification of Echo Park was complete. Maybe, neighbor, you should go back to Woodland Hills or back to Nebraska, where there's still some quiet civility amongst neighbors and no loud music, live or recorded. And just maybe you should think twice before you come knocking over at my door again, asking me to turn down my KJazz or KCRW radio broadcast out the speakers of my back deck overlooking Echo Park Avenue and the sexy Hollywood Hills and your newly purchased overpriced home just below me on Avalon Street. Because, no, pal, I'm not going to turn down my music at 6 p.m. on a sunny Friday afternoon at the beginning of my weekend in the middle of my California paradise just because it's a little loud or a little inconvenient for you and your wife and your kids going to work at the Disney Animation Factory in Burbank or the Wells Fargo Bank downtown, or wherever you're going to and from, earning you the privilege of living in our great and historical neighborhood now sadly known as trendy, gentrified Echo Park. Yeah, that's what I said to this guy, John. And he said back to me, after his neck turned beet red and the steam came out of his nose, "Well, fuck you too. Maybe we did move to the wrong neighborhood if the rest of the neighbors are anything like you." "Have a nice night, neighbor," I said as I closed the door on him. And I went back out to the back deck and heard that my music might have just been a tad loud. And I went back inside and turned it down a bit, disappointed in myself. What a hypocrite. It was all inevitable. The gentrification of Echo Park, the rents rising, the Latinos and the artists being forced to move to cheaper digs, the new bars and restaurants, the development of Chicken Corner across the street from the no longer Magic gas station, now a new shiny Chevron station across the street from the trendy Chongo coffee shop. Yep, the Roosters have been replaced with 45 new condo units, bringing maybe 500 new residents into the hood, marching up and down the hill to Dodger firework displays after all the home games. And just a year ago, the original Pioneer Chicken and Supermarket, here for decades, gone too, replaced with the new Little Caesars Pizza and Walgreens across the parking lot from Red Hill, the restaurant. And just to add insult to injury, now Barragan's, the oldest Mexican restaurant in L.A., on Sunset, just east of Echo Park Avenue, where the wife and I went every other Friday afternoon for the most delicious free fried chicken and half-price margarita happy hour in town, closed too, replaced by a new fish and chips British pub, the Lost Knife. I spoke to Mr. Barragan himself, the late middle-aged son of the original owner. He said, "What can I do? The neighborhood is changing, and I am tired." I shook his hand and thanked him for all the years. I said, "Yeah, the times they are a-changing, Mr. Barragan, but I'm not sure if for the better." So, for now, but for who knows how much longer, my wife from Indonesia and I from New York are still happy residents of Echo Park. We manage the rent with a subtenant, and we still enjoy the view from the back deck out over the Hollywood sign, where the sun sets over the Pacific Ocean in a kaleidoscope of color about 340 days a year. We plant vegetables, tomatoes, jalapenos, Japanese eggplant, crawling cucumbers, every spring in the top terrace of the lower 40. And we eat them all summer long until the Santa Ana winds come and blow during the brutally hot days of Indian summer. We still appreciate where we live, in my landlady's home, in the hills of Echo Park, because, hey, none of us really owns anything, right? So, here's a toast to the Reds and the artists, to the Latinos and the newbies. We all live here together. Sure, both the old Cuban bakery and jewelry shop, where I bought our engraved gold wedding bands, are long gone. But there's still a few remaining pawn shops and 99-cent stores next to the Echo and the Echoplex on Sunset, the alternative rock symbols of the new Echo Park, where Angelinos flock every weekend to discover the new Jackson Browne or the new Elliott Smith. And yeah, I now have to bike to the Cubano Music Festival, because there's just no place to park around the newly renovated lake with all the new condos and all the new residents. But hey, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, love from Echo Park. Still, mi barrio. Original music composed by Amanda Yamate, sound designed by Alysha Bermudez, produced by Harry Duran at Fullcast. Please contact us with your feedback and to schedule an on-air interview. This podcast has been supported with the USC Capstone Grant. Special thanks to Phil Allen and the School of Dramatic Arts for their support.